And that is that there are simple tools that you can use that act like lifelines in your life. And those tools are meaningful mantras, temporary or permanent tattoos, or there are ways that you can use even a simple Post-it note as a environmental cue. That's what a researcher calls it. You can use a simple Post-it note to act like a lifeline, to remind you that you have the power inside of you to face something. And in those moments where it really counts and you're trying to level up, that yes, you can show up in this moment and you can perform your best. And so while we're going to start with the tattoo story, which is a great story, we're going to get to a deeper topic here. And by the time you're done listening to this episode, you're going to have a phrase that you've identified that will act like a lifeline for you moving forward. And because I always say this is not just a listening podcast, it's a doing one, I'm going to ask you to do something specific. And no, it's not to go get a tattoo. So on the topic of tattoos, if you have a tattoo or you know someone who does, you know that every tattoo has a story. And mine begins just a few weeks before our 15th wedding anniversary. Can you believe this? We've been married 26 years. So this would have been 11 years ago, right? 11 years ago. Yeah, 11 years ago. 11 years ago was 2012. And Chris, let's just set the table for everybody, because 11 years ago, our life looked really different. 2012, you were still in the restaurant business. We were $800,000 in debt. We were struggling with drinking issues, and we were trying to make the ends meet.
And we thought a tattoo was going to save us.
Hey, we thought it would distract us. We decided that
it was our anniversary.
It was our anniversary. And so we decided that it would be cool if we got tattoos on the date of our 15th wedding anniversary. And
provided it wasn't the same tattoo.
Well, see, this is the thing. I wanted to get matching tattoos. I thought it would be super cool if you and I got the exact same tattoo on our 15th wedding anniversary. And what was your response?
Never.
Yeah, I think it was no fucking way. I think you said that is so cheesy. We are bound for divorce if we get matching tattoos. We are not doing that. And so that was kind of my idea. And Chris just shot it out of the sky. Boom, not happening. And so we got.
Do you remember what my reaction was to even getting it? We had been talking about it maybe a little bit.
I don't remember. Do you remember yours?
Was it an out of the blue idea that, hey, let's do this for our anniversary, or we had talked about it before?
I think we had talked about how we both wanted to get one, and then we decided we'd get it for our 15th, and I thought we'd get matching. You said absolutely not. And then all of a sudden we went into our corners, and we were individually thinking about our tattoos. And as the date of our anniversary, August 24th, came closer and closer, and to the appointment, I started to panic because I had no idea what I wanted for my tattoo. And then all of a sudden, you guys, Chris walks into the room one day and says, I've figured out what my tattoo is going to be. Why don't you tell him the story? Because I wanted to kill you when you told me what it was going to be.
I grew up as a ski racer and was competing in races every weekend in my teenage years. And I was always that kid in the starting gate that was shaken like a leaf and worried about not the race, but the outcome. You know, I was in my head thinking about what was going to be my time and how it was going to line up. And
would it freak you out?
Yeah, it was always about the result.
Yep.
You know, the end game, if you will, for
Yep.
me. Or at least this was the observation that ultimately my dad had of me. And my dad was often at these races, and he helped me see the racing and the course a little bit differently by constantly suggesting that I just take it one gate at a time. To just, rather than think about the big picture or the end game, just one gate, one gate at a time. And along the years, my dad and I would converse about this without ever necessarily giving it a name of a philosophy, if you will. But he wrote a letter to me about it one day. And that was my wake up, my tattoo wake up call, that I decided to pull the handwriting off of a letter my dad authored about just taking things one gate at a time. And so that became my tattoo idea.
And so describe where it is and what it is.
I put this tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm, and I didn't necessarily have a vision for having it kind of be oriented such that I could read it really easily, but ultimately it was the tattoo artist who suggested kind of the right placement of it. But it just says the word one and the word gate, one gate, written in my dad's handwriting.
It's beautiful. And so, being the shallow piece of shit that I am at times, when Chris announced that he had figured out his tattoo and that he was going to take his dead father's handwritten letter to a tattoo artist and have that tattoo artist lift those two words, one gate, in his father's handwriting and put it on his left forearm where he could see it and have as a reminder, I thought that is the best damn idea. And now I have no idea what the hell I am going to tattoo on my body. I was so pissed and so jealous that you had such a good idea. And you guys, I freaked out and stressed out until the night before we were supposed to get tattoos. The night before we were going to go into this appointment, our 15th wedding anniversary, I still had no idea what I was going to put on my body. And then luckily, a friend of ours who was one of my very first clients when I became a life coach, Deva, who owns the amazing store in Boston called Matsu. She stopped by to say hi, and we started talking about the tattoo. And I said, I have no idea what I want. She agreed. Chris's idea, that was a really good idea. Really good idea. And I
didn't know Deva was the origin of this idea for you.
Yeah. So what happened is I started saying, I don't know what to do with it. And she said, well, I know what it should be. And I'm like, you do? What should it be? And she said, it should say it shall be. I said, what? What do you mean it should say it shall be? She said, you say it all the time. I said, no, I don't. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, Mel, you have coached me for years. You always say, if you put in the work and you hold the belief that'll happen, at some point, it shall be. I had honestly never realized that I had used that phrase when coaching other people. And as she said it in that way, it just kind of went clunk. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the words it shall be on the inside of my right wrist. And it'll be both a reminder to me that if I do the work, if I have faith, if I keep my head down, and if I give up my timeline, it shall be. It'll all work out. It'll be fine. And so that was that. Now, meanwhile, there's another twist to this story. Because do you remember what happened on our actual 15th wedding anniversary?
Do I ever? That's the funniest part of the whole story.
Okay, well, tell everybody.
Well, just that Mel, you were in radio at the time.
Yeah,
right?
It was when I was a radio host. So you guys, Chris was still in the restaurant business.
So
we were struggling financially.
She was doing some show in Boston, and it wasn't the tattoo artist. You had some show talking about tattoos. Correct. Right?
Correct.
Throwback. And
all these people called in.
And they suggested like the best tattoo parlor in town.
Correct.
If you're going to get a tattoo, you have to go to this guy.
Yes.
And you, of course, took it upon yourself to book us the appointment, which was at that point, it had to have been 6 months out.
Yes, and they had a huge wait list, so you couldn't even get in until like 4 months out. We booked this thing 6 months out, you guys.
So you
put
plan
down
it
this big ass deposit
for our anniversary.
We have a babysitter. We're going into Boston. We got our appointment. We're about to pull on the Mass Pike. And what happens?
We're pulling out of the driveway, and you're like, well, where we go? Let's get the address of this place. And then you said, well, let me just call him just to make sure, let him know we're coming. And you call him, and sure enough, the guy says, oh, no, we got you on the books for next week.
And I start pleading with him. Oh, no, you can't. We made this 6 months. No. It's next week. It's a week from today. But that's not our anniversary. I never would have screwed this up. This must be a mistake. Can you just fit us in now? No.
And we were going away. We couldn't even make the following
week
but
also
anyway.
The thing was it was supposed to be on the anniversary.
Right.
So now here we are with a babysitter. We have our tattoos. You've got your letter. I've got my phrase. We have no appointment. I start calling tattoo parlors because we decide, let's just head into Boston. And I'm like, how hard could this be? Do you know the first 5 or 6 tattoo parlors that I called were booked? Like no openings. I didn't know you couldn't just walk into a tattoo parlor. Who the hell is getting all these tattoos? So I finally call the 6th or 7th place. And it was a place that was right around the corner from this apartment that we used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when we first moved to Boston before we had kids for you to go to graduate school. And the guy answers the phone and he says, sure, come on in. And then he says, what's the name? And I say, Mel Robbins. And he goes, you mean from WTKK, Mel Robbins? I thought I recognized this voice. I love your show. My wife's a huge fan of yours. Come on in. It turned out to be a guy that listened to my old radio show. So we drive to this place. The guy is this amazing, big, bearded teddy bear of a guy. He gives us this big old bear hug. Chris goes first because here's the next twist that happened. It had completely been lost on me that I hadn't even picked out a font or handwriting. And so I had the phrase, it shall be, but I had no idea what I wanted it to look like or how big it was going to be. So while Chris got his tattoo, I pulled up Microsoft Outlook and I started going through the font choices and ended up picking the only font that looked somewhat cool, which turned out to be something called like Zaftigs or Dabbigs or Zad. It was like a Z. Printed it out on his printer. And that became what I permanently put on my body. And I was having like doubts and second guesses, and Chris's looked so good. But I was just like, why didn't I think that I should have like thought about the font?
It looks a little bit like your handwriting though, so that's good.
It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I love my tattoo. I love my tattoo. And so I've got these sort of curved, it shall be right on my inside wrist. And big hooky things, and we'll if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. We'll put it on the stories. And the thing that I love about this, and this is why it's so important for us to talk about meaningful mantras today, and environmental cues that you can use to help you stay steady, to help you tap into that courage and that confidence and that power that's inside of you. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at this tattoo. And these words, it shall be, they are a lifeline for me. You know, when I think about moments where I was failing at something or life was going off the rails, I would see those words, it shall be. And I'd take a deep breath and I'd put my head down and I'd say, Mel, you just got to keep believing it's going to all work out. You got to keep putting in the work. If you're a good, kind person, it'll happen. Maybe not on your timeline, but just keep going. When times were tough, these 3 words, it shall be, reminded me that this is just a moment. And like all moments, this will pass. And now our puppy, Homie, is like wanting to go to the bathroom. It shall be.
No, but it thinking about the question that Jonathan wrote in and saying how you're so intentional in everything that you do. It was a very thoughtful question, and I would agree that your application of that in life is very pronounced, and interesting how you didn't necessarily see it like Deva saw it. And how the only thing that was not intentional about it was the scramble to get the right tattoo before the evening itself.
Well, you know what's great about this?
Actually, I shouldn't say that, because you booked the appointment. We had it on the anniversary. Like, we were organized. We were ready to roll. There was intentionality.
Like, the entire story of the tattoo is a demonstration of the philosophy it shall be. Because nothing went according to plan. And yet we just took it one gate at a time. And I was fierce in my belief that it was all just going to work out. What are the odds that the appointment is on the wrong date, or that the first 5 places I call are not available for appointments, but the one that is happens to be a guy that listened to my little local Saturday radio show and recognized my name and voice? Like, it's just a little bit of optimism that acts like a lifeline for me. And it reminds me that it's going to work out, that I have the power within me to face things. That's how I've been using this phrase, it shall be, over the last 11 years, because these have not been the easiest 11 years of our life.
I would argue some of the hardest.
The hardest, for sure. I mean, when I think about the state that you were in when you left the restaurant business just 2 years after I got this tattoo, and you just checked out of life. You're like, I'm getting sober. I have to heal. I have to take care of myself. And for 2 years, you were just comatose. And I'm like in survival mode. And I would look at this, my tattoo, it shall be, and it gave me faith that if I just kept working hard, we'd figure it out. That we'd figure out how to pay the bills, that I would figure out how to build this business, that you would figure out how to heal and find your way back to yourself and to me. And even things like moving up here to southern Vermont and how hard that was. And feeling like I've just turned my whole life upside down. And yet there was this deeper knowing that drove our decision to move and to change our life profoundly, from living outside of Boston to being in this tiny rural town. And on those days that I just felt so lost, I would look at my wrist and go, it shall be. It's going to work out. Like, I can do this. And even with the podcast, everybody was like, you know how crowded that is. You know how there's 5 million podcasts. I was like, you know what? I'm playing the long game. It shall be. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to go for it. And I even feel that like when our kids are struggling, like it helps me, this phrase, it shall be, to put almost like a beacon out in the future. It's a reminder that at some point the road ahead is easier and great things happen, and it gives me faith to keep going.
I think the location of that tattoo is also properly aligned with you and your own just being reminded of that, right? Because if you had that tattoo on the back of your shoulder,
I'd never see it.
Where you weren't seeing it all day, every day, you had always wanted to put it right, something, whatever it was you were thinking.
Well, why get a tattoo and hide it?
Right.
You know? Woo, there is something in the air today. I cannot wait to jump into our topic today. The universe is saying we have to talk about tattoos. I'm really excited because, first of all, my husband Chris is here. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Mel.
And I had to get Chris here because I am going to answer one of the most frequently asked questions that I get, and it is a question that is very personal.